great. Thank you. Then, thank you once again, Arthur. We will move on to our next session now, which is going to be some live editing with Albin and Jan. I guess they're already with us now. And you're going to be showing us how to create some Sparkle queries, right? And then perhaps around the topic of maps and possibly implementing them into Wikipedia.
Indeed.
That's what we're showing for, or going for. We don't have a regular intro live bloop, 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 Wikidata 10 thing, but here we are. Albin, what are you gonna show us?
I got really into trains, and in particular trains and museums. So I wanted to add some maps to Wikipedia articles. I started off very bold working on it the other day and realized I should start with one museum, not all of them in Sweden. So I will be adding a map and showing some of the constraints and things you can do with maps and Sparkle. And you, Jan?
I was thinking first, just remind ourselves like what the basic is, what cartographer, the extension that brings us this Slippy Maps into Wikipedia can do now, and then from there build to a template and then to a query if the time allows. So we'll see. But I'll start sharing my screen here, I think, and I hope that one shows fairly all right. And I'm starting on this page, which is the documentation page for cartographer. It's also in the notes, and we're going to jump down to what's interesting here. Do we via Wikidata idea, or maybe I'll go straight back up first, because here's the important thing. We use this tag map frame to build a map. You might want to check your wiki if you're encouraged to use this raw on the wiki page, or if your wiki is using templates to embed this. So I'm just going to show it raw here, and then you will figure it out. If you have a template, most likely it will correlate. But let me jump back down to the section here. So we're just going to show, I'm going to build something like this because you can pull things into Wikipedia. So I'm going to start a new page. This is my user page on or a sandbox. And so you need to call map frame. And this one requires at least 2 parameters. So it needs to know the width and the height. Otherwise, it will give you an error. So I will just go with something like this. And I know this thing is going to be tall. So I'll go like that. That one will need to be closed. And then within this, there's sort of like your collection of things. And the collection needs to start with being in there. And for using Wikidata, you have to specify that it comes from something external. Otherwise, you can also sort of like draw things, but here we want to go with type. Oh, that's not type. And external data. And the service that we're going to use, and this could be a little bit confusing, is you have, and I'll go back to this, you have to specify if there's points, lines, shapes, or if you're creating a geomask when you're doing this. And you can have all of them, but not in the same collection, so to speak. So I'm going to show you what I mean with that later. But first, I'm going to do a geoshape. And then if you want to get something from Wikidata, you just say ideas. And here I'm going to go with Norway, which is Q20. And I need to spell correctly to go for there. And if I just show preview now here, I think we'll show a map. Yes. We also see some of the peculiarities. Here, I think there's something wrong with our polygon for Norway, for main Norway. But then we also see that it's sort of like out to, if I didn't set longitude and latitude, it will center it automatically. And it looks a little bit weird, but there's a little bit of Norway here down Antarctica. So if you want to scroll this up, you can do that as well manually. But if you want to show something else, you just change Q33 and you get Finland. And that looks pretty nice. And all these, of course, geometries is coming from OpenStreetMap. So they're dependent on there being a link from OpenStreetMap to Wikidata. Yes. There are many ones which have complex and unexpected because they're all over the world. But you can also do it like this. You can do a little list here. So you can say, yeah, I want both Sweden and Finland. And you'll get them both in the same go. So that's pretty neat. But if you want to color these, you can add properties here, but then everything in the same collection will get the same color. So if you want to do them separately, you have to do them twice. So I'm going to copy this just so that we can see and remove Sweden from here. Copy this and add Sweden here. And now this needs to be enclosed with these little brackets here. And now I think that will just work. We'll get another one, which will look the same, but they're specified twice, which means that if I go here and I go properties, and I'll go with, let's say, no, I think I need to go with this because you can have many different properties. Fill, and this one also need that. 00 CC 00 perhaps. It's going to be some kind of green. You see, Finland got green and Sweden is still gray, and I could specify another color there. And there are a lot of different things that you can specify for these. They're basically styling shapes up here, stroke, width, fill, opacity, and so forth. So that's pretty cool. Now, well, what more can you do with this? Like, oh, this is pretty easy. And then I found, well, we have a template for like diplomatic relations on Swedish Wikipedia, which used to use this like already fairly good, the SVG maps, where you can sort of say, oh, show me Sweden and Finland like this. But I added that to do sort of the same thing, but getting the geometries from Wikidata. So you show Sweden and Finland and colored like this. And if we look at the source here, we can see the same thing we had here before. We had the external data, we had the geoshape, we had the IDs that takes one of the parameters, and the properties. And here you see some other of the properties you can get. And it also gets the label from Wikidata through a template. You can also see here that on Swedish Wikipedia, we're not using raw map frame. We're using a template to embed it, which sometimes it makes it easier, sometimes it makes it harder. I don't know what I think about it really, but this is how we have decided to do it. So this is like a fairly easy thing. Like it's just two parameters. It pulls something in and it shows you something like this. And of course, the good thing with this is that you can actually zoom in and pan and so forth, which you cannot on the static SVG map. So that's, and especially if you have other complex geometries where you want to do that. Here it wasn't so complex. So then I found this article about the Nordic Council, and it has also a map. And you see the small little rings here. So I was thinking, oh, maybe we could create this map using Wikidata. But instead of just listing all of the like we did here, we could query Wikidata who is in the Nordic Council, because that might change over the time. I don't know. Maybe this is fairly stable, but you could imagine other, like NATO, which recently just got Finland and Sweden as members, changing over time, so you don't need to update the map. So let's try to do that. So let's go to Wikidata and create a query. And one of the trickiest parts is that on Wikidata, usually when you started like a query and all the templates, they have the item. But if you're going to go to cartographer, you need the ID so, as a parameter. So you need to call it like this. And that's sort of like what tells cartographer which geometries am I going to fetch. So let's start with that. And see, well, ID, I think it is member of. So let's see if we can find that. Member of. And Nordic Council. This one, yes. So let's just see what we get there. And yes, this seems to be the right list. So that's a good start. And now if you go to code here, we have a little list here for map frame where you can just get the code, where it also formats it, because this doesn't allow for line breaks, which could be a hassle. And it's also a little bit tricky with the quotes sometime. But here you can just grab this and put it on a wiki page. And it also reminds you here that if you going for items, they need to be called ID. And if you're getting coordinates, they have to have geo as a parameter. So let's go back to my little, and I'll put this on top right now. Now we also see when I got a geo pointer, but these are our countries. So let's go for a geo shape. So I have to update that. Otherwise it will not show anything. And there we go. We see the tricky Norway again, but at least we have the things. We had some nice colors here. And I'm thinking it might be interesting to show which one of these are in the European Union and which one are not. So let's start with, see if we can query for that. Or maybe even, let's start with, because now if you click here, nothing is happening. But this one allows for a lot more. So you can get title description, which gives a little pop-up, which also can have wiki text. So let's go with that first. So let's go with the service for labels. Auto language will not work. That only works on WDQS. So for now, let's go with English. And now I actually have to query it here. So let's go with ID. Maybe I don't. Well, it will be easier because I'm going to give it a name. Because this one needs to be called title to show. And then I'll select title as well. And let's see. There we go. Now we also see what we have. So let's put this. I'll just copy what was the query here. Back to this page. And we'll see that little pop-up, hopefully. So immediately when I load here, nothing is different. But when I click this, you see Greenland. Woo! That's very nice. And now let's try to make the colors. So for the colors, it needs to be called fill. Oh. for it to know what to fill it with. So now I need to understand what they are if they are part of the European Union or not. So I'm going to do that with an optional and say ID part of. And then let's say European Union. No, let's go with part because I'm going to compare it later. Let's just see here if I get something. If I wrote that correctly. No, spelling error. Stop it. There we go. No fill yet because I haven't assigned anything. We can also see they are part of a lot of other different things. But I think this low number is European Union. Yes, we can see it up here. So what I want to do, I want to bind something to the fill. So bind, and if part equals, and what was it, 458? Then I want to bind this to something like dark blue. So like that. And if not, I'll go with a yellow. I think that could be ECC, something like that as the fill. Let's see. All right, so that's fairly good. We see here Finland, European Union got the dark blue, and Norway, they got the yellow. They're not in the European Union, but I have too many rows here, and I don't like this. And I think I'm lucky now that the first result is the European Union because it's a low number. So I can do a sample here. As the fill. But of course, I need to call this something else down here then. So I'll just do this like F, sample F as fill. I'll remove the part. And now I'll need to group this ones because otherwise I'm going to get a bad aggregate. And here we have them 8 again. And Finland, Sweden, Denmark got that color and all the other ones. So let's see how that works if I try to put that in the page. So I'll grab the query part from here. And I'll go over here again. And I'll replace this part. And let's check. All right.
Nice.
So now we have Greenland yellow, and we have Finland and Sweden as blue. Of course, now we don't have a legend here. I could write that in the caption text, but I'm thinking we're going to use another feature here. So we're going to use the possibility to put in a description that we saw here, which also can take wiki text, which add a text on the pop-up underneath this bold thing. We could also make this maybe later, but let's start with that. So I need to bind a new thing. So I'm going to start with this bind. Actually, I'm going to copy everything here as a template. So if it is there, I'm going to say the wiki text should be member of the, and make a link to European Union. And for the other one, not a member of the like that. But we're not going to call that F. We're going to call that D. And then we're going to copy this and do the same. A sample for that too. D and description is what it needs to be called. Let's see if that worked. All right, that worked out nicely. So I'll copy again here from the map frame export, code export, and go up here. I'll replace this part and show you the preview. And now when I click here, you see this is a redirect. I have a, because it's in English, I have used a script for that. Oh, this one not. Oh, because that had capital. Oh, very weird. Swedish Wikipedia links. And you can actually make this very complex. So you could draw in an image here or something like that. So it supports Wikitext in that sense. So you can make your query very complex if you would like to. And then, of course, MapFrame also support you to focus the map somewhere. So you, like you see here, you can set the zoom, longitude, latitude to something, whatever you want. So if you don't want it to show this bottom part of Norway, you want to have it focused up here, you can add that in here. So you can add, I think, let's just try the zoom for now. So let's go for 4 and see what we get. Maybe 3. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and now it's go somewhere weird. So here we would need to focus that somewhere. So let you show what that could be. Remove the text. This one is not mandatory. Latitude equals -10. Longitude, no, 75. Or do I mix them up now? Maybe I do. We'll see very soon. Yes, I did. Get your lat and long right. Oh, that was a little bit too much zoomed. So maybe I need to go to zoom 2. There's something that might be useful for the article. Of course, now it would be great if Norway was actually full and not have a broken polygon that doesn't fill it.
There is also a nice little trick if you just want the zoom to be right, because you can actually do that in Visual Editor.
Oh.
Then leave Visual Editor and do the query parts, because those things you can't do in Visual Editor.
Yes. So there's one, if I'm saving this now, publish this page. So now we'll share you that with it in the chat if you want to check this out. There's one problem here. If I edit this now in Visual Editor and want to check these out, they have dynamic features. So Visual Editor will not take it when it is external data, I think. So you need to use the local data.
So if you do the zooming before you actually add the dynamic parts to it, you can kind of get the map and then just replace the parts you painted yourself, so to say. So if you start from Visual Editor, you can still use its features for a lot of things.
Yes. That's the trick. So
Yeah.
you start in Visual Editor and then you go to the external data.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. But that was what I'm going to show. I'm going to put all these links into the Etherpad and let Albin take it from here.
Amazing. that was a great introduction. Let's see which window I want today. I think it's this one. There we go. So I started off with an idea of making a map, a thematic map on Wikivoyage with the single purpose of if you go to Sweden and you want to see old railroads or maybe go on old railroads, here you can go and see everything. But it turns out that if that would be the case, I would need to do a lot of work on Wikidata, and I needed the ID like 2 weeks ago. So I ended up making my work a little bit more narrow and focusing on this particular museum railroad. And even is on the Swedish Wikipedia, it got this lovely overview of all the stops, even when the stops was created, and even things like, hey, it's crossing a channel here, and things like that. So I started off moving that information to Wikidata because I want a map in this article. And I came up with this. And many people before me has done maps like this. I thought it was a nice exercise to do it myself. But essentially, we see all the stops and then we draw a line between. But now I want to take this and get it into Wikipedia. And to what extent is that possible? And that's what I want to look at today. So to start off, I already have this query. How far can I just get with this? So as Jan showed you, he showed you if you go down here, you can click on code, you can go to map frame, and you get a bunch of code. I'm not hugest fan of using this because it doesn't always work and there are some problems with it. I have some particular preferences and some things are just tricky. So I ended up, after a lot of frustration, I ended up building my own too, which I'm gonna share in the chat already. And what essentially this does is that it takes any SparkQL query, like the one we started from here, and it essentially helps you to make that compatible with Cartographer. So for example, directly as we do this, it do generate the query, but it says here that we are missing the ID variable. So we're gonna fix that, and I have a very strong preference of how to fix that, because I want to be able to get rid of this query from my bookmarks and then just end up on Wikipedia in 2 years' time and be like, hey, this query here, I can still read it. I can paste it into the query service, still understand it without changing railway station everywhere to ID and that type of thing. So I tend to always do it. I'm gonna zoom in here like this. I'm just gonna take the station, and up here in the select distinct, I'm gonna say select it as ID, and that warning will go away. Then there is another thing I like to do to make it a little bit more readable. You can escape the quotes with a slash. That works in 100% of cases, but to me that's a little bit less readable. So you can also replace them with single quotes. This, however, does not work if you use single quotes somewhere else. But it works in this case. So I can pick that and copy this. And I think we're going to create a new page here. I'm going to go to my user page, put in just a new page. I'm going to edit it. And let's see if I can actually show that trick. I'm not... What happened? Okay, let's give it a reload. Okay, it just... Okay. And there should be maps. I think I lost my uslang. I hope this is helpful. But then I can show this sheeting that I told about. So I know that I want to start where this railroad is with a bit of positioning. So I'm gonna do that. And let's just get the start like that. And then I can insert this map like that. And I actually get this zoom and latitude and such by default here. And from now on I can keep going. So it's a little bit of a trick that I like. Then from the beginning already I'm gonna do this wings that lets you add multiple services as Jan showed you. And then to actually...
Do you want to zoom one?
Yes.
There we go, thanks.
To actually get this going, I'm gonna go over to help cartographer, not the one about icons, but the real one. And this page, John has already showed us, this is like the Bible for how to use cartographer. It contains everything you need. So I'm gonna find an example and copy that. So I want to use geopoints, external data with a query. I'm gonna copy this part here. Head over here, paste it in, it looks good. Gonna head over, copy this process query, paste it in, add some quotes in then, and Jan has showed me that I can use the preview, so let's do that. And we're gonna see that it completely fails. And that's because this tool does not warn about not having geo, because geo is technically optional for cartographer. If you do use geopoints, you probably want it, but technically it's optional. So I'm gonna add it just like I did before here. There we go. And let's copy this version, of course. Move over, see if we get any closer. Show preview. And we got a bunch of maps here. And we got a bunch of markers. We can see that there is more than one because the shadow is really it's really dark. But I want to actually remove the zoom, latitude and longitude to let it do that itself to see if we see more of it. Yes, we actually get more of a preview here. That's great. And also let's remove default. Now I'm removing all of the things I showed off early on.
Now I think you will get an error. You need the width and height.
I need those. Let's make them twice as large to make it a little bit easier for the rest of you. Show the preview. That's really nice. I can't click them yet. There are no names there. But if we go back to my original query, and especially the visualization here, we can see that I draw this line. And I do that by creating that line as a string and returning it. However, cartographer can only take points from Wikidata itself. For example, Jan showed that it picked the shapes from OpenStreetMap. It can also pick shapes from Wikimedia Commons through the Wikidata GeoShape property, but you cannot build line information yourself, for example, or shape information as a string in the query service. And that's really, really sad, but it also makes it really hard to do that type of thing. But what I wanted to show, and what Jan also showed, is we aren't limited to one service here. So if we want to show that line, it might be in OpenStreetMap and maybe in Wikidata. We need both of them to show it. So let's head over to, we can actually pick one of the stations here and see if we have a connecting line. So I'm gonna copy this and I can see here because of my user scripts that it has an OpenStreetMap relation. So if we open that, we can kind of see that yes, there is a line in OpenStreetMap or a shape. So we can pull this in. So let's do that. Let's jump back to Swedish Wikipedia. Let's see. We can actually copy all of this to begin with. Then we need to change this to, I think, geoline, even if it's more than one line. And then let's do IDs here, just like Jan showed us. And then put in the QID for the railway. Let's see. And I think that should be enough for it not to break. We need a comma there. The formatting is a little bit odd, but let's see. Right. So we got both the line here, and I'm gonna save this now. There we go. So we can bring this up. Maybe we can already do this in the preview. But here we go. We can, however, see that the line in OpenStreetMap is not representative of the line as in this is the traffic line today, because the traffic goes from here to over here. And that kind of makes sense for OpenStreetMap because they don't necessarily map that type of thing. So arguably we cannot really use this. So what we're left with is drawing our own geometry or creating a geometry on Wikimedia Commons and pulling it from there. Let's see what the time is. Given the scope, let's take this query, however, and see if we can add some icons to it, because that's something that I really want to do. Just like Jan, color different shapes. And in this tool here, we got a nice little link here to cartographer icons, which gives us a map in the middle of nowhere, I guess. Can we actually, sorry, no, I'm a bit off here. Yes, at Null Iceland. That's a lovely solution. I like that. But this gives us a series of icons that we can use, and we have some ones related to rails here, like marker symbol rail. And there are two ways we can do this. We can either, and John showed this as well, put it in as a property here. Properties in plural, I'm quite sure. And say I think it gave us marker symbol. It gave us everything we needed in the documentation there. So maybe that's enough. Let's see the preview. Yes. However, not all of these stops are train stations. On this line, there's a lot of places where you need to press the bell to make the train stop, or stand there waving to make it stop for you. And just as Jan showed you, we cannot really use the proper standard. We need to modify our query. So let's get back to the original query here. Let's display it as map. And let's see what we can do. So the way that's modeled is that the instance of is either railway station or I think railway halt. So we can, and I don't use it here in the query. What I use is select everything that's connecting to this line. So let's do select instance. For once we had a query without it. So do station pdt instance of, call this type. Hopefully we haven't too many types on this. And then we do what Jan did earlier, and we do it if with a bind. So I think the syntax is, it's a little bit different. So usually we write, because the query service expected, SparkQL in lower camel case like this, a small first letter, then when the next word starts we have a large one, uppercase one. But that's not what cartographer expects. It expects them to be in snail case, as it's called. So marker underscore symbol. And let's spell that correctly. Add it up here already. And then if the type is equal to railway station, then I want the value to be, let's use double quotes here, whatever we was told it was according to the documentation. Let's see, I want that one. I think that looks the nicest one. It's just rail, okay. So query service, and I'm curious, I haven't tested this. What happens if we leave the auto one blank? Because I have not found a good symbol used for stop. So first of all, did I break something? Do I get the result I want? I did break something. Maybe that makes sense.
Find S.
Of course. That looks better. There we go. I got 15 results. Did I get that initial type? We probably have a duplicate type off. So I got, we can see it in the name here that it has, it's called hot. And then we got a marker for when it's called station. In some cases we do not have it. I guess that's because we have multiple instances of here. Because this particular station is also a museum, I realize now. So let's see what happens there. But we can fix that later on if that's the case. We can do an additional bind or a filter. So let's go. Once again, I'm gonna take this because it's quite quick with this tool, so I don't feel a need to just do the parts I want. So station should be as ID, and chord should be as 0. And that should be it. So I'm gonna copy it to clipboard, move over to over here. I am gonna preview this. Yes, that's what I want. I am gonna publish this to make it a little bit easier to see. So we can see that there are 3 proper stops here. It should be 4. So here we have something that's going on. That's the multi-bit type. Here it's the museum. But this is generally really nice. That could be informative, for example, on Wikivoyage. So it's exactly what I'm looking for. Of course, color could also be helpful there. I'm just not as good as with the color as Jan, who just types up a hex color and it's a real color. That's not for the rest of us, or at least not for me. Okay, but let's debug this issue here. So let's select the type so that we can see it. And move over to the table. Right. So we can already detect the duplicate because it was the Hässelby railway station. and I can see that this one looks off. Let's see. Listed building in Sweden even. Let's have a look at that. Right. That's a model I am aware of that we have. I don't like it, but I can live with it.
I was
Let's
going
live
to
with
say,
it.
I don't like it either. That should be on, there's another property for protected status or something like that.
Yeah, and on list. I think they usually also tend to have that property. Okay, this
Odd.
has, okay, that should be bot job. That
Mhm.
goes on the to-do list. But we can still manage this because we should be able to use a sample. Oh, there are a couple of ways to do this. Let's see. I want to look at the item. We only have one issue like this. Railway station. It has an end time here as well, which is interesting. Right. So I guess there is a horrible way to do this. There's also, I'm really curious about this one. Because in Cartographer, orders matter. So what if we order this by marker symbol? Will we be able to sheet that way? So I want it like this, I think. This might be a terrible idea because that doesn't solve the issue, but it would be really interesting to me if it works. And I'm gonna, whoops, did I not copy the right thing? Yes, there we got a warning. Thank you. There, the warning went away. Let's do the other one. And copy this part. Head over to edit. Edit is not gonna work. I'm gonna need to reload as well. I'm not sure if I'm the only one who have that bug. And then show the preview. Let's see if this works. No, it's still not on top. I was really hoping that would work. That's how lazy I am.
Yeah, I was trying that as well, because if you go and check my map, you will actually see that Finland is covering Åland.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put Åland on top, and I couldn't do it by ordering here.
That's
so
really
might be
interesting.
another cartographer bug or something, because it should be possible to order them, like you say.
Yeah, the order is supposed to matter. However, I'm curious if it's supposed to work in the order direction.
Maybe they're sort of like in the same stack, and we can't order them within the stack.
That's interesting, but I think if you have like multiple QIDs in just a regular list like this,
it will be in order from left to right.
Yeah. But that's a good point. Maybe that's another bug. No, it did work.
Oh,
success! Hopefully it's not random. Let's publish this and give it a proper reload. Yes. I mean, technically we have double icons here, so we probably have a different issue. But I wanted to showcase that you can do it by ordering, and it turns out it does work. It just the other way around. It shouldn't. The one at the top is not the prioritized one; it's the one at the bottom because that's the last thing rendered on the map. Um, that's great. Um, but as you see, I'm not really where I want to be. Technically, I do want the line to be rendered because if we would remove this, it would still be there on the map. Like I don't think we can see it because it overlaps entirely. No, yes it does. You can see it, but the default map tiles in Cartographer and on Wikipedia's are all. It's not very high contrast when it comes to Rails, so you can't really see it, in my opinion. So I do want this to be rendered, but I do not want it to look like this because it's not really what I want. So either I would draw it or import it from OpenStreetMap to Commons, or yeah, that's pretty much my only option if I don't want to change the relation in OpenStreetMap. So it's one of the limitations, but I'm getting somewhere. I almost got one museum railroad in Sweden done. And I think that gives us about 3 minutes left.
I tried it again with the ordering on Åland, and it doesn't work on my map. So that's weird.
That's really weird.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions in the chat? I think what's coming after this is closing the days.
Yep, it would be the last session just after this. So if there's any last questions in the chat, please post them or unmute your microphone. Thank you everyone who's made it this far. Thank you, Jan and Albin, for showing that and for giving me a little introduction to map frames. If I eventually found out how to color one in.
Great. And I'll also transfer all the questions in the chat to the Etherpad, and all our links are in there. Not the page you created, Albin. Maybe you can put that in the Etherpad.
Yes, it's gonna be in the Etherpad in just a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're having a regular live editing slot, aren't you? Would you like to plug it?
Oh, we don't have any planned. So perhaps with your permission, we can cut this from the stream later and publish on our thing.
I'm sure that won't be a problem at all.
Yes.
They tend to show up in the newsletter when we do them.
Good, excellent. Oh, Bodhi asked if you can use the color of the service page instead of geoshape.
I think you can use colors regardless of what service you're using, but they might be called different things. So I
Yes.
think Albin had in his query was RGB was the thing. So I think it's only for.
I think it's symbol color if you do points.
Yes, that could also be.
The RGB is used for the cursors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably a case here for
Yeah.
harmonizing both of the query service and cartographer, but
Yes.
that's a different story.
Yeah, but do check the documentation on the help extension cartographer, because that one is really, really good. And
Yes.
I also encourage everyone, if you've come up with some tricks that is not documented yet, put it in there or on the talk page there so that everybody can enjoy it.
Indeed, and it's a great piece of documentation. It's also my go-to. Here's an example of good documentation in Wikimedia for end users, and I always point people to that page because it's filled of great examples. It kind of covers both the advanced and simple cases as well.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm wishing Cartographer would have that we have in the map service results view is that you can assign something as a layer with the layer parameter, and it will, like, depending on it, it will just give them different colors. In Cartographer, you have to give them different colors by binding, which is works like for if you have 2 or 3, but if you have 20, it's really a hassle.
Indeed.
And I think I was asking that before in the Telegram channel, and Lucas had a sort of like a hack, like making a MD5 hash and cutting that into color code.
Right.
Right. Well then, thank you again both so much. That was really interesting. Interesting to watch. Oh, and with is there much connection to Wiki Voyage with the description of like the train line with the different stations?
So my original idea was to do like a thematic page on Wikivoyage, but they are also like they use cartographer for a lot of things. There is even a piece, if you go to this cartograph documentation, there's a special sections for things that you can do on Wikivoyage.
Okay, nice. Well then, yes, thank you both again, and then I guess I'll shortly begin the closing session.